slight lavender kiss in the deep background. Hi, I'm James from the Paint People, and today we're gonna look at some really cool grays. I'm of course referring to the cooler blue undertone gray paint category that is synonymous with sleek, soothing, modern color palettes. Gray can come in all different forms. In fact, we recently broke down the major undertones that can be found in gray paint alone, but it seems like there was a lot of you that wanted some more examples on those cooler blue undertone grays out there. Blue grays for a lot of people are synonymous with what a true gray feels like, especially when you consider that natural sunlight is actually quite blue leaning. More often than not, we do equate blue grays as being closer to what gray should be. I've picked out 5 different blue leaning grays by Behr Paint in this video, and I also tried to show you a fairly broad spectrum of the different types of blue grays that exist. Some that are a little more subtle, kind of like my sweater. Others that maybe have a little bit of purple present, maybe a dash of green, but I can promise you that all of these colors are pretty darn cool. But not as cool as my subscribers watching that also hit the like button for me. The first color to speak on is called Evaporation. First of all, pretty cool name, because I'm all about the water cycle and I'm sort of into clouds, so that's cool. But much like the name suggests, this color does have a fairly airy feeling to it with an LRV of 66 that leaves it in a pretty nice spot in terms of versatility, where it's light but not too light where it'll be washed out in brighter conditions. It's also technically the most neutral of the 5 grays we're going to look at today, and by that I mean it has a pretty nice balance of colorant within it, giving it a pretty plain gray feel. In practicality, however, this is one of those gray colors that will still feel cooler or blue leaning more than it would feel warm or grayish leaning in the slightest. When you factor in direct sunlight or northern exposed shaded light or even interior LED lighting, these can all add a somewhat cooler color cast onto your paint colors. So if you're not much of a color tester, for shame, then you can roll the dice and bank that this subtle color will appear as a cooler gray in your space more often than not. Now, a second color that takes this blue color cast into a more frigid, icy direction also has a little to do with evaporation and condensation, as it's called Cumberland Fog. This is an interesting color choice because it does share some similarities to evaporation, but when you pair the two together, you can really see the blue undertone coming through more prominently in this one. The LRV, or its perceived depth, is 68, so it's only a 2-point separation between the two colors, but what makes Cumberland Fog cooler, color temperature wise, it has its red undertone dialed down a little bit, so it won't feel as neutral and will be more prominent with its blue. What's nice about an even cooler gray is it can cool down those areas of your home that get a lot of warm light, and that requires a bit of a balancing act color-wise. It's also more deliberate as a blue toned gray that will add more visual color hue, but still in a controlled, soft way. It's really a fun color to use in place of gray that you don't necessarily want to feel like a gray, if you know what I mean. For example, it's actually a great choice for kitchen cabinets because it's still not overly dynamic, but it's going to show itself against white backdrops, especially for those of you that still have some beautiful, lightly colored quartz or marble countertops. But maybe you want to change up the white cabinetry you have. Either one of those 2 colors we just spoke about would do a great job of being a super subtle accent color that'll just draw your eye without feeling invasive. For a slightly different take on a blue gray, we can turn that dial up just a bit more on the red. And this of course gives us a little bit more of a subtle purple touch, which is that combination of blue and red undertones. Now the ratio of red to blue isn't drastically different, but what you have here in Paparazzi Flash is a slightly deeper cooler gray with an LRV of 59. When you start to get a lower LRV, traditionally that means the colors will appear darker and usually have a greater amount of colorant or saturation present. So even though there's still a decent amount of blue in this color, there's also a bit of red that helps give you a slight lavender kiss in the deep background. This will be another situation where the lighting will have a massive impact on the color. So what ends up happening is the blue that is present will be amplified in those cooler lit areas. The benefit of a color like this is it won't have as much of an apparent green undertone on the other hand, and that's what you get when you start having more purple leaning grays. But let's take things a bit deeper and darker with Prelude. And this is a cool blue gray that introduces probably the most amount of green out of the colors we talked about so far. This one has an LRV or light reflectance value of 47. So now we're firmly in the mid-tone category. But what's really nice about colors of this nature is they do come across as very calming, and as I like to call, a spa-like feel to them, which ends up making them really, really awesome choices for bedrooms and bathrooms. This is still a color you could utilize in other areas of the home for sure, but you just have to be hyper aware of your decor, because I find that cooler grays of this nature can feel a little too on trend sometimes. So it's not going to be quite as versatile as a warmer neutral like your grayish color palette, which can tend to work a little more seamlessly with more things. But Prelude is definitely a great option for those of you that want to introduce something more saturated and maybe something that's even more apparently coastal. For my final color, I have for you the most awesome color name of the bunch. I'll tell you that for free. It's also the deepest color, and it's a stormy gray that brings the drama. And it's actually called Rainmaster. I told you it was good. With a 36 LRV, Rainmaster is the most dramatic color of the bunch and has a cool ability to clearly make a statement, but also be able to incorporate itself into a pretty diverse number of design styles. It has the same sort of qualities that you would expect with gray, but with that added element of a shaded blue, which can coordinate with cooler color palettes really well, but also complement warmer ones at the same time. So those are some bluey grays. What should I do next? Red or yellow ones? Stay tuned.